What is going on, everybody? So, the Nintendo Switch 2 is on its way. It's only 23 days away of the time of recording this, and the hype is excruciating for a lot of people that just want to get their hands on this hardware that weren't able to go to those specific cities in the United States that had the Nintendo Switch 2 experience. Unfortunately, I wasn't picked for that lottery to play the Nintendo Switch 2. I would have covered it if I could, but I will still get my hands on it day one, so that's a good thing. But I've been thinking about all of the games that I want to see on the Switch 2. And obviously, I want to see all the games on Switch 2 because of its hardware capabilities and the fact it is more powerful than something like the Steam Deck, but not the ROG Ally. We can leave that to the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro, which by the way there most likely will be, along with an OLED screen, which a lot of people are going to probably start talking about soon after getting their Nintendo Switch. The LCD screen on the Nintendo Switch 2 is great because it is an IPS 1080p VRR 120Hz screen. That is a lot of specs, especially for a Nintendo handheld, but they still don't have that missing piece, which is the OLED screen. But before anybody starts talking about that, let's talk about what games we want to see on the Switch 2. Now we have Street Fighter 6, Yakuza 0 Director's Cut with Yang Ye's voice, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Mario Kart World, Demon X Machina 2, Sonic X Shadow Generations, and we have Hitman World of Assassins showing up, which I really want to get that game if it had a proper physical release. And yes, Nintendo is releasing it physically, technically, by game keycard, but game keycards do not count. They're pretty much e-waste, and you may as well just download the full game on your system so you can access that game as well as others without needing to have a game keycard inserted into the system itself. But I just wanted to list off the top 10 games I want to see on the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, my number one game is Resident Evil 2 Remake. I play that game religiously on the Steam Deck and all of my other handhelds, as well as my laptops, because that game is perfection. It's the best survival horror game to come out in the last 15 years, and I'm including Resident Evil 4 Remake in that, and I would absolutely love to see that on the Nintendo Switch 2. The second game is, of course, Resident Evil 4 Remake. Since the Nintendo Switch 2 is using HDR, a lot of the RE Engine games would look absolutely incredible on the handheld. The third game is Stellar Blade. We have a June 11th release date for PC, and it would be absolutely amazing to see a previous PlayStation exclusive title show up on the Nintendo Switch 2 this early. If we have a release on the Switch 2 shortly after its PC release, that would look promising for future Switch titles, since we know that games like Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy is showing up as well. The fourth game is something that hasn't been confirmed yet, but you know it's coming, and that's Doom: The Dark Ages. Doom Eternal in 2016 arrived on the Nintendo Switch 1, and they were actually impressive ports. Even though they were locked at 30 FPS, it would be great to also see the entire modern Doom trilogy show up on the Nintendo Switch 2 at 60 or maybe even 120 Hz, if Nintendo can make that fly. And the fifth game would have to be Monster Hunter Wilds. I haven't played this game yet, but I would love to play for the first time on the Nintendo Switch 2. I heard there's going to be somewhat of a Monster Hunter Rise sequel on the Nintendo Switch 2, which isn't a good sign for people that wanted Wilds, but I would love to see that alongside a Rise sequel. One or the other would be great, Nintendo. And I know it's going to take another 6 or 7 years just to get something like this to show up, but hopefully, since the Nintendo Switch 2 has vastly more compatible hardware compared to the original, it will be easier to port games like Wilds. And we all know CD Projekt Red released Cyberpunk 2077, and for number 6, I would love The Witcher 4 to release on the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. Most likely we are going to see this, but to have a sequel that we've only seen tiny teasers to show up on the Nintendo Switch 2 would re-establish that confidence that more modern and recent titles are going to show up on this handheld console hybrid as well. Now for number 7, I would absolutely love to see a Nintendo Switch 2 version of Tekken 8. Tekken 8 on the ROG Ally, as you saw before in my previous video, plays absolutely wonderful and looks perfect on the handheld, but to see something like that running on a Nintendo Switch 2, and the VRR is going to smooth out the performance of Tekken 8 very well, similar to how it does on the ROG Ally. I would absolutely love to see how Tekken 8 performs on the Switch 2, or if they can give us Tekken 7 on the Switch 2, that would be great as well. I know there's going to be a lot of trilogy packs tracks since Nintendo is a bit behind on modern titles like Tekken 7 and 8. So to see all of the DLC for Tekken 7 and 8 show up on the Nintendo Switch 2 would be surreal, as long as you're using a proper D-pad to play these games, of course. And since we have a From Software exclusive already on its way for the Nintendo Switch, I'm sure that From Software is already working on ports to the rest of the Dark Souls series on the Nintendo Switch 2, and I would love to see newer proper remasters of Dark Souls 2 and 3 on the Nintendo Switch. And I know those are two games, but I would love to see either one of those, or both, as my number 8 most anticipated games on the Switch 2. And since Batman Arkham Knight did so well on the Nintendo Switch 1, I would absolutely love to see either an exclusive or a port of a new Arkham game as my number 9 most anticipated game for Nintendo Switch 2. It could either be a full-fledged version of Arkham Knight, along with the other games in the trilogy, including Arkham Origins, or a brand new Arkham game exclusive to the Nintendo Switch 2. Either one would do, but that would be my number 9. And number 10 isn't what most people think it would be, but the Nintendo Switch 1 was lacking a specific genre of games, and those were racing titles. I would love to see all of the new Need for Speed games show up on the Nintendo Switch 2 in proper form, because Need for Speed Heat is almost impossible to play on these handheld PCs that I have, and I have 3 of them. On the ROG Ally, Need for Speed Heat plays just fine, around 30 to 40 FPS, but if we can get these games running at 60 FPS on the Nintendo Switch 2 with proper optimization and money behind it, then having all of these new Need for Speed games on the Nintendo Switch 2 would be a dream come true for me. Or if we could have a game like Forza Horizon, I pretty much just want all of the newer modern racing games on the Nintendo Switch 2 for my number 10. Now, the alternative number 10 would be, of course, Grand Theft Auto 5 and Grand Theft Auto 6. I was just kidding with those racing games. That's like number 9.5. Having a game like Grand Theft Auto 6 would make sense because they have delayed it an entire year. Usually it takes around a year to get a port like Grand Theft Auto 6 to be re-engineered for a handheld system like the Nintendo Switch 2. And seeing either Grand Theft Auto 5 or 6 finally show up on the Nintendo Switch 1 or 2, or if possible, GTA 5 could show up on both, while GTA 6 could show up exclusively on the Nintendo Switch 2. But yeah, guys, that was my top 10 and a half most anticipated third-party games that I would love to see on the Nintendo Switch 2. If you have any games on your mind, leave it in the comments below, and I hope you have a good one. Later.